Yay. Okay, I realized I haven't been recording. So, recording officially starting now. Welcome everyone who's watching asynchronously. Okay, we are going to have time for questions, but we'll have a designated time for that in the middle and also at the end. So, if a question pops into your head, either put it in the chat and we'll try to answer it, or you can write it down and save it for later in the presentation when we have specific time for questions. Okay, we are going to move on to the next slide. Here is a little introduction of everything that we're going to be talking about today. One of the most important things Sierra Club California's volunteers can do, of course, is to build relationships with their legislators back home to help move strong environmental policies forward. This training and launch party today will walk you through the key steps that California Advocacy Committee is doing this year to pass these bills, and just in general how to be an effective in-district advocate for all of our priority bills this year. We will have a quick recap of the CEAC and some of our very basic programming, and then we will hear from our senior policy analyst, Jacob, about the state of the legislature and what the broad environmental legislative themes are for this year. And then we'll get into the details of the CAC's priority bill list and how to make the best case for each of these bills. And I do think one person might be unmuted, so just check to make sure you're not unmuted, so otherwise we can all hear you. Okay, moving on to the next slide. Sorry, y'all, my computer's kind of being a little laggy. There we go. All right. As you all know, Sierra Club California identifies key priority bills each year and it works with volunteers to advocate for them throughout the legislative season with the goal of getting them passed. This work happens through the CAC or the California Advocacy Committee. The CAC was launched last year in 2025 to formalize and expand in-district lobbying across Sierra Club California and our 13 chapters. Because legislators care deeply about their constituents' perspectives, this has become one of our most effective tools for advancing environmental and environmental justice priorities. Each season, we select about 4 to 8 priority bills and provide training on them so that you can confidently lobby your legislators. We also work closely with an incredible team of volunteer coordinators who help schedule meetings and guide the advocacy process, ensuring our efforts are strategic and effective. The coordinator role in particular has been hugely successful and has expanded the capacity of the CAC significantly. We currently have coordinators for the San Francisco Bay, Loma Prieta, Tehipite, and San Diego chapters. And I think they're actually all here today. So, John, Martha, Lisa, Brenda, Sue, shout out to y'all. Thanks for all of your wonderful work. Um, but we are working on expanding to other chapters. So that is just all to say. We've got to let someone in. Sorry. Oh, never mind. Just kidding. Thank you, Jacob. I assume you let him in. If you're interested in stepping into the coordinator role for your chapter, we would love to have you. It's a meaningful way to contribute, and not too huge of a time suck during most of the year during the legislative season. You know, we definitely lean on you a lot, but not too much for the fall and winter. A little bit busier during the spring and summer. But if you're interested in the coordinator work, you can let Karen or I know, and we'll get in contact with you. You can do that via email or just even in the chat via Zoom. Okay, next slide. Oop. Okay, and here are all of our wonderful coordinators and our whole team. This slide highlights the CAC team, which includes both staff and volunteers from across the state. If you ever have any questions, any of these folks are great resources. Karen Mackey and I serve as the volunteer and staff co-chairs, respectively. Sue, Martha, John, Brenda, and Lisa are the coordinators representing different regions of California, and Jacob is our policy staffer who keeps us updated on what's happening in Sacramento. All of our coordinators are longtime Sierra Club leaders with extensive experience in legislative advocacy. They play a key role in scheduling meetings with district staff, which is often the biggest bottleneck in the in-district lobbying process, and in supporting you throughout this. As a volunteer advocate, your role is, of course, to communicate your availability when we reach out, prepare using our talking points, connect those issues back to your own experiences when you're speaking with your legislator, and clearly convey why their vote matters to you and their constituents. All right. Jacob, I'm going to pass it over to you.
Thanks, Lane. So we wanted to give folks kind of like a few top lines to what we're seeing in the legislature and why we've chosen some of these bills as what we're going to be working on with the Ethics Committee. And for folks that just joined and folks that are watching online, I'm Jacob Evans. I'm a senior policy strategist with the California chapter, lobbying here for these things in Sacramento. Um, But as it was last year, affordability is the name of the game for legislation this year. Every single bill has an affordability angle, whether it's you think it would or not, because legislators want to react to the cost of living crisis in California. Um, it's a big problem for many ways for gas prices, for housing prices, for anything. I know most of us have seen our grocery prices go up over the last few years. Um, and some legislators are using that for better or for worse to advocate for things that are going to lower costs for Californians, or so they say. And so, in that vein, we're seeing some broad deregulation gain some steam in the legislature, whether it's deregulating CEQA, deregulating air quality regulations, taking away some powers from CARB. Some moderate legislators are kind of abusing some affordability talking points to advocate for things that we don't like. I was just lobbying on a bill. I can save you the long details of it, but it would uh, step on the foots of CARB and implementing a very important building decarbonization program. And the staffer I was talking to, we gave him the 101 as to why the bill is bad. And the first question out of his mouth was like, "Can you tell me in one sentence how this would raise costs if it were to pass?" So every single bill has an affordability angle, and that's kind of what's most effective. We're also advocating against some nuclear bills that would break California's nuclear moratorium in California. I will get closer to my thing. Um, that would break California's nuclear moratorium to construct new nuclear projects in California, which we know are unsafe and have their own associated environmental impacts. And those talking points are nothing compared to the fact that nuclear is expensive. All these bills have an affordability angle, so it's important in our talking points for these as well. And the final point I wanted to make is that our climate champions are becoming fewer and less bold in the legislature. Last year, we had 35 new legislators come into the legislature, which is over a quarter of the legislature, meaning that we have 35 new people in the legislature. We've lost some good champions. Folks like Ben Allen, who have been a reliable Enviro vote and Enviro legislator, are becoming less common. And the folks that are left are being less bold because they know that they have to go against an affordability narrative where any new climate policy has to hit the boxes of it being cheap and affordable and not raising costs for Californians. That being said, I'm very excited to talk to you all about some of these bills today because there are some good bills out there that we will need the grassroots support to pull off getting them through their committees and off the floors to the governor to sign. Um, because we need some to show these legislators that they're able to take bold action and have the support they need to combat this affordability narrative. But that's kind of depressing. Next slide. Not depressing because we have action takers today. But we're also wanting to give some logistics of where we're at in the session. So we're in the second year of a 2-year session, which means that some bills from last year that we're holding out for amendments are now being moving forward to this year. There's many bills on the table. And we're moving through bills first House policy committees. So bills in the Senate are in their Senate policy committees and bills in the Assembly are in their Assembly policy committees. And they'll be doing policy committee hearings until April 24th, where they'll be taking large amendments to bills, killing some bad bills, advancing some bad bills. And this is a key point where we can pressure some of these big, ambitious bills and get these chairs of these committees to be okay with letting them advance. But then after the 24th, bills will go to their fiscal committee, the appropriations committees, and they'll be voted on in quick succession the week of May 11th, where they go through a long list of bills. And whatever makes it out of appropriations committee will go to the Assembly and Senate floors and be voted off until May 29th, so until Memorial Day. And that's a big point where every single vote matters. We want to make sure the folks that are on our side and voting the way we want them to. So every vote counts at the end of May. And the process begins again in each bill's second house after that until August 31st. That's it for me.
Yeah, thank you, Jacob. Great overview. And I guess the question and segue is, what does that mean for us? And so this is our lobbying calendar for the year for the California Advocacy Committee. Um, Everything kicks off on March 21st when the Sierra Club California Legislative Committee, of which I know many of you are members, so thank you for all of your hard work on that, when y'all vote to finalize our positions and priority bills. The bills we're previewing today are all endorsed by the CLC, so we're super excited to be lobbying hard for them. Right after that, we move into the legislature's spring recess, which is one of our most important windows for advocacy. During the recess, legislators are back in their district and are usually more available to meet with their constituents. That is when our voices will usually have the most direct impact. So, our first major lobbying push will run from March 26th through mid-April. That said, meetings may continue beyond that window depending on legislator schedules. After that initial push, we'll take a short pause to reassess. We'll reevaluate which bills are gaining traction, where the biggest environmental and community health stakes are, and where our advocacy can make the most difference. And that does mean that our focus may shift slightly and our bills might move a little bit as we move into the next phase. Then we gear up again for our second major push during the summer recess from July 2nd through August 3rd. This is another critical window to engage legislators while they are back in district at home, right in your backyard. We may also reach out to you for some last minute advocacy in August, especially if we're working to secure any key votes as bills move to the finish line. The legislative session wraps up on August 31st. At that point, any bill that hasn't passed both houses is effectively done for the year. And as you can see, this is a fast-paced sprint, both to advance strong environmental legislation and to stop harmful bills. So we just really, truly appreciate the time and energy you can contribute to the CAC through this busy season. All right. Any questions as of right now that we can answer? You can put them in the chat. You can raise hands. You can just come off mute. Anything? Okay. Well, great for us. Happy to move on then. Okay, this is a slide that everyone probably has seen, but we just want to do a really quick refresh. A lot of these steps, you guys in many cases are veteran in district lobbyists, but in case you aren't, just a quick refresh. Um, First, of course, you need to know who your legislators are. Once you know who represents you, the next step is to stay informed. We really encourage you to sign up for your legislators' mailing list so you're up to date on their policy positions and their events and what their particular focus is in their district. Then, of course, comes the main event of meeting directly with your legislator or their key staff. These conversations are where your advocacy really comes to life. Your CAC chapter coordinator or a trusted volunteer advocate will schedule these meetings, and we will provide you with a clear playbook so you can confidently represent Sierra Club California and all 500,000 members statewide. As we work to schedule these meetings, your coordinator will reach out to you to find times that work best for you and for the legislator's office, so it's really important to respond promptly to them. This really helps us lock in meetings and just keeps everything moving. Once a meeting is scheduled, you will work with your coordinator and fellow advocates to build out an agenda based on our legislator meeting template. You can totally tailor it and edit it to fit the conversation at hand, but the key is to making sure that everyone knows what they're saying ahead of time, who's covering what points, how you'll tell your collective story, et cetera, et cetera. You should do this in a pre-meeting, again, that your coordinator or a volunteer advocate will likely schedule. Sometimes it's as simple as meeting 10 minutes before a legislator meeting if you guys are really on it, but oftentimes it's like a 30-minute to an hour meeting where you can kind of discuss the bills and break them down all together. We will provide all of the up-to-date talking points and fact sheets for the different priority bills, but please do take time to review these so you feel prepared and confident going into it. During the meeting, stick to your agenda, stay focused, and make sure your key asks are clear. And then afterwards, please make sure that one of your team members completes the post-meeting communication form so that we can track our advocacy. So much of this is important so that we know what was discussed and so that we can be the best advocates housed in Sacramento based on the conversations that you're having with your legislator in district. So it really does help us out to fill out that form. And just do remember that this is a two-way conversation. If they ask for Sierra Club's support on anything, including bill endorsements, testimony, or press support, please don't commit on the spot. Instead, let them know that you'll follow up, flag it for us, and make sure it's captured in the post-meeting communication form. Yeah, so we'll provide talking points, we'll provide leave behinds. I think that's the gist. Hopefully that makes sense for everyone. Any questions on this? All right, perfect. We are going to move into the meat of the launch party now, which is an overview of our six main priority bills. We have been getting some feedback, which is good feedback, that it's a little bit light on Senate bills, so we might add one more bill in the next week or two. And if we do, we will make sure to update you all the talking points and fact sheets about it so that you're prepared for it. But just know that we might add one or two more bills in the next week. Just something to be aware of. But these are our six bills. Um, five of them are bills that we are supportive of, and one is one that we're not. So take that party of no. We are moving things along. And yeah, I'll get into it now. Jacob, please feel free to chime in, or any coordinators. I know y'all have a lot of good um, expertise on this front. Okay. Oh, sorry.
Do you want me to jump in on these, Lane?
Yeah, go for it.
Sure. Did you want to talk about this at all? I don't want to take the mic.
I'll give a brief overview, and then if you have anything else to add, that would be great. Sorry, my computer's being a little funky right now. Being kind of slow. Can you guys see that?
Yeah.
Okay. Why is it being weird? Wait, I'm sorry, you guys. It's like really not opening. I'm gonna stop sharing real quick. Sorry. 1 second. Pause, intermission, sorry. Technical difficulties. Okay. Okay, are we good? Can everyone see that?
Not yet.
No.
Oh, yes.
Okay, perfect. Yay. Oh, sorry, that was scary. Okay. This is AB 1777. Assemblymember Robert Garcia introduced this legislation to expand the state's authority to regulate greenhouse gas emissions. AB 1777 would empower the California Air Resources Control Board, or excuse me, California Air Resources Board, to adopt regulations targeting emissions linked to indirect sources, which are facilities and land uses that attract significant mobile emissions, but have historically fallen outside direct regulatory control by state authorities. Existing law allows regional air districts to regulate indirect sources, but CARB's authority to act directly on those emissions at a statewide scale is unclear. Regional regulators have periodically adopted indirect source rules at the local level, but a patchwork of local rules leaves gaps in statewide air quality measures. AB 1777 would fill that regulatory void by ensuring CARB can step in where necessary. It would amend Health and Safety Code to make sure that CARB may adopt and enforce emission mitigation rules for indirect sources where necessary to reach federally mandated air quality goals. The definition of indirect source would mirror the federal definition, which generally encompasses land uses and facilities that attract mobile sources of emissions, such as heavy duty trucks, trains, and other vehicles. This, of course, is a top priority for Sierra Club, California, especially given recent air pollution regulatory rollbacks under the Trump admin, and will create a new tool for California to use to help protect the public health and the environment. Jacob, anything you want to add to this one?
Yeah, super excited about this one. This is our second run at getting CARB authority to implement indirect source rules statewide. Like Lane mentioned, indirect source rules are a tool to regulate air quality that don't require federal approval. We saw last year Trump claw back a ton of clean air regulations and our power to implement them in California. And this is one thing that the state can do to continue to regulate our air to meet our clean air goals. It's facing some strong opposition from industry and the trucking industry. It did last year. This is run last year as AB 914. This is the second run. It's a little bit of a slimmer bill, and it just gives CARB the authority to implement them statewide. It doesn't tell them how to do it, it just gives them the ability to do it. But still very powerful and very exciting.
Yay, any questions on AB 1777? Feel free
I have
to,
one question, if I could.
yeah, please go for it, Joe. And then
Oh,
we'll hop over to Robert.
is there an example of how it would um, act, or what it might tangibly do or
Oh,
provide for?
yeah. So South Coast AQMD, which is LA's air quality monitoring district, that covers LA and the Inland Empire, has a successful indoor source rule. It's called the WARE Act, and it covers warehouse emissions from
Hmm.
indoor sources. So fleets that service warehouses are basically given a menu of options they can take to either electrify their fleet or take other steps to reduce their emissions from the fleet, or pay into a fund that helps the warehouses reduce emissions in other ways. That's been
Oh,
successful.
I got you. It would provide for um, some capital money so that they could improve maybe their forklift fleet, that type of thing.
If they pay the fine option, yeah.
There's a fine option too, I'm sure.
Yeah. Like they're basically given a few choices in how they can take action to electrify their fleet, or
Gotcha.
if
Okay.
they don't want to do that, they can just pay the fine.
Okay. I just want to understand it. A lot of I'm just thinking devil's advocate. A lot of the warehouses, et cetera, they're obviously um, trying to make a profit. They don't want to turn away a sale, and yet they get trucks pulling up to load up. Um, and the trucks are have severe emissions. It's tough for the warehouse to deal with that. I would think situation, even though it's not really acceptable, it's tough for to deal with and turn away maybe a sale from a trucker picking up a load. That that's my only thought about trying to understand it
Yeah, luckily our economy is strong enough. We have the leverage to ask them to, renovate themselves and take steps to electrify.
to assist.
Yeah.
Gotcha. Okay, thank
And like
you.
Jacob said, this has been implemented
Right.
patchwork wise across SoCal, so it can be successful and like hasn't, driven away business or whatnot.
Okay.
Um, Robert, go ahead and ask your question. Ooh, Robert, you are muted in case you mean to unmute.
Sorry, didn't know I was on mute. Okay. Yeah, I'm pretty similar to the previous speaker, but I think that if you want to sell this, the best way to do it is come up with specific examples that, I mean, that would happen as a result of the direct passage of the bill or what the passage of the bill would enable. Okay. Because it sounds like, in many cases, the passage of the bill won't immediately enable any change. Okay. There needs to be follow-up legislation. I mean, at this level and on this sheet, it's too vague for me to talk to anybody about it. Okay. Unless they're already very knowledgeable about the topic. That's my suggestion.
Yeah, we'll send out a fact sheet and our support letter for the bill that kind of outlines that more in detail. But that's a great point. And those examples are powerful to uplift. And just want to emphasize that this legislation gives CARB the authority to implement those programs statewide. So there wouldn't be any follow-up legislation. It just gives CARB the regulatory authority to implement these things.
Great questions. We're going to hop over to Lisa next.
Yeah, I just wanted to add to this um, that what this does is it creates a potential of statewide um, minimum regulation. An example for us is we've been trying to get San Diego County um, to to adopt the South Coast regulations, which are very good. If you want to take a look at one that's and strangely enough, Orange County, no less, has a really, has pretty good indirect source regulation. And it would allow this to go statewide if CARB could take it over. So instead of all these patchwork, and what we found is that the people who are sitting on our air quality board are have kind of cold feet. And this might allow them, give them some backbone. So on a practical level.
Totally. Great comments, Lisa. Thanks for that input. I'm gonna ask, or Susan, feel free to ask your question.
Yeah, I just, in addition to examples, I was just wondering if the cost of diesel fuel, which has skyrocketed, um, would affect what we're trying to do here. It sounds like what you would prefer is more of these electric trucks. And frankly, I don't know how often, or I don't know anything about electric trucks. It seems to me they would be pretty expensive and not very affordable. But then so is diesel fuel at this point. So I was wondering if you could give us any suggestions on how to encourage our administrators to support this particular bill. I think checking Orange County's air quality board is a good example, but if you have any others, I'd appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks for that question. Um, and that's a good point. I definitely want to emphasize that heavy duty electric vehicles, aka trucks, are on the market. They're out there. There are a lot of incentives at CARB to get them to the market, and this is one of those things where if we require industry to start electrifying, then the market becomes cheaper, and CARB is an easier pathway of towards regulating them into existence. Those are good points. Thank you.
All right, Cindy and then Martha.
Yeah, no, I think that was a great point that this would actually create an incentive because a lot of big companies are just starting to, I guess, do research on if they also want to electrify their fleet, and join Amazon and others. So this would just be another incentive. So I think that would be a really great point. But my question is, for indirect sources, besides the fleets that are going to the warehouses, what are other examples of indirect sources?
Yeah, any fleet that services a fixed source of pollutions, like a port that goes to the sea, a rail yard, an airport, warehouses. Those are a few of the examples. Yeah.
Great, thank you. Thank you.
All right, Martha.
I dropped some points in the chat that I think were pretty effective when we talked about similar discussions with BAFMID in the Bay Area. And labor really supports these issues in a lot of places, and electeds care about that. Just saying that may help you in your meetings. And because the impacts are not just on, they're at all neighborhoods across. One of the most expensive areas in Fremont, for example, has a much higher level of GHG and health impacts around that. So there's a lot of health impacts that you can also use in those meetings that really make sense when you speak, because you're talking about your children and your elders in your neighborhoods. And we know that in areas that are impacted by these indirect source pieces, like in West Oakland, life expectancy is 15 years less. Trips to the hospital around asthma, et cetera, 70% more. And so some of those pieces may help you, particularly in your district when you're having those meetings. I just think that maybe we could get you some pieces on that, at least on the health impacts, because those talking points truly move legislators. And they're a big deal. And then the other piece is that fills in the gap that federal EPA is no longer enforcing, because we've lost so much at the federal level around fossil fuel emissions, et cetera. And I feel like that also motivates our electeds, is that this is gone and the endangerment finding is gone, and it kind of leaves it up to California to lead the way. And we really do. And so that's a big plus. It kind of turns them into a hero. And I'm saying that that's really positive. And Jacob added in there that it's co-sponsored by SEIU. And these things really do make a difference when you're in there and you're saying it, because not only are you saying, hey, I know what's going on here, and your constituents know, and we're so proud of you for leading on this bill. So that's a suggestion that I would do, even if they're somewhat wishy-washy, to point out that they need to be the hero. That's my.
Martha, those are really excellent talking points. And yeah, I think the more that we can help, particularly Democrat legislators, be the anti-Trump, it makes them feel really good. And so if we can kind of pit them against each other in a positive for the environment way, I think they really like to feel like standing up to his administration, which is good. So something to think about and bring up. We're going to move on to this next one, but thank you all for those really good comments and questions. Okay, this is a bill that is near and dear to my heart as a water organizer. AB, oh, sorry. Okay, AB 2218 was introduced by Assemblymember Ash Kalra, and it is sponsored by the Karuk tribe and the Shingle Springs Band of Miwok Indians. And this bill establishes a state policy of acknowledging and correcting historic water-related inequities perpetuated by state-sanctioned actions against California Native American tribes. Since the passage of the Water Commission Act of 1913, which created an official permitting and licensure process for surface water, Indigenous tribes have been largely excluded and unprotected from state water law, just completely ignored. AB 2218 establishes a state policy of recognizing these water-related inequities committed against the Indigenous people of California by state acts and correcting them through compensation, through legal recognition of rights, and through replacement of lost benefits. It mainly requires that all relevant state agencies consider and incorporate this policy when revising, adopting, or establishing rights policies, regulations, or grant criteria to address inequities. By functioning both as a values-based acknowledgement of past harms and a practical corrective tool within existing authorities, AB 2218 will create a legal foundation needed to rectify generations of state-sanctioned injustice. I will say, as someone whose fights are more often than not with either the State Water Resources Control Board or the Department of Water Resources, two entities that are often on the opposite side of tribal nations in all of these water disputes. This is going to be a hugely important bill for both Indigenous sovereignty and for environmental protection. Um, and Sierra Club is super happy to support it and hopefully get it passed. It's really a relatively short bill. It's like two paragraphs. You can read the whole thing in 5 minutes. And it is more a values-based declaration than anything, but it does mandate and provide, the beginnings of a legal foundation for Native tribes to seek compensation and corrective action for a lot of this historic exclusion. So just something to think about, and a really important bill that we are supporting this year. Does anyone have any questions on AB 2218? All right. Gonna give it 5 more seconds and then we can move on to the next one. Yeah, Sue Chow, go ahead. You're muted, Sue.
Who are the primary opponents of AB 2218?
Yeah, so the primary opponents are ACWA, which is the Association of California Water Agencies, which unfortunately is no surprise. These are
Right.
the bad guys, more or less when it comes to things California water related. And we were doing a lobby day with a broader Bay Delta coalition a couple weeks ago, and Aqua was already in all these rooms telling people that this is one of their top priorities to defeat this year. So there is going to be some pretty substantial opposition to this bill, which is why we really need all of your support.
Mm.
Thanks for that question, Sue. Cindy, yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, would they be arguing that this could make water more expensive for Californians? And if they do, how could we argue against that?
I think that's almost certainly the justification in their minds, and I think my argument would be that water agencies benefiting off of indigenous tribes exclusion is so deeply immoral that it is worth whatever cost is incurred. But also, there's no specific costs that are related to this this bill. I mean, fundamentally, it is a values-based declaration, and so if they're asking you about specific costs, there's none associated with this bill. It is just like moving these key water agencies in the direction of recognizing and acknowledging these bills. I mean these injustices.
Great.
All right. Thank you both for the questions. So is that a lingering hand? Okay, I think so. We will move on to AB 2569. This is Assembly Member Hart's bill. AB 2569 addresses a structural gap in CEQA that emerged after a 2015 case, which is the California Building Industry Association versus Bay Area Air Quality Management District. This decision, CBIA, significantly narrowed the scope of environmental review. This is the first of two main CEQA bills that we're supporting today, and so it'll be a big theme of this year. Historically, CEQA required agencies to evaluate both a project's impacts on the environment and, importantly, the environment's impacts on a project, particularly when it came to hazards like wildfire, flooding, or toxic contamination. That analysis was critical for informing land use decisions and ensuring appropriate mitigation. However, the CBIA case in 2015 limited that framework by holding that agencies generally are not required to analyze the effects of existing environmental conditions on future project users, unless the project itself exacerbates those conditions. In practice, this has led to a form of really constrained environmental review, where significant foreseeable risks, such as siting housing in high fire severity zones, in floodplains or areas with elevated toxics, are often excluded from CEQA analysis. As a result, environmental impact reports may omit direct risks to human health and safety, and corresponding mitigation measures are never considered. AB 2569 restores the pre-2015 standard by explicitly requiring analysis of how existing environmental hazards affects future residents, future workers, and users of a project. This includes climate-driven risks like sea level rise and wildfire exposure and extreme flooding, as well as chronic hazards like pollution and contamination. And we got a question last time, and it also does include considerations of seismic risk. From a policy perspective, this bill will realign CEQA with its core purpose, informed decision-making through full disclosure of environmental risks. It also supports more resilient land use planning by ensuring that hazard exposure is evaluated upfront rather than externalized over time. Ultimately, AB 2569 is a targeted statutory fix to ensure that CEQA remains responsive to current and future environmental conditions, particularly in the context of climate change. Martha, I see that you have your hand up. Jacob, do you want to add anything before we go to questions and comments?
Sure, yeah. Yeah, super excited about this one. I think Lane covered all of the details of it, but want to mention that like this gives us a real opportunity to message about the positive sides of CEQA. As I'm sure you all are well aware, last decade or so, many moderates and other folks in the legislature and elsewhere have hit on CEQA over and over and over again about how it's burdensome, unnecessary, and places red tape on everything. But that red tape is filled with stuff like this, like providing safety standards that are vital as our climate is changing, as sea level rise is becoming a real problem, as wildfires are becoming more and more common. Restoring something like this that requires those safety analyses in CEQA. As far as this bill makes it in the legislature, which hopefully it makes it all the way, but each point it reaches gives us a new point to message to legislators that CEQA is not bad and that it has these positive aspects to it. But yeah.
Great. Martha, go ahead.
Does it give the homeowner specifics or the project specifics about that they can use to deal with things like home insurance, et cetera, to deal with mitigation or anything around a project? Will it give the community information that allows them to mitigate for that project to make it better? Or, I mean, I guess what I'm saying is there, I have not delved deeply into the language on this piece. And so I wanted to know if there is a piece that allows that to go to give that transparency accountable pieces to local groups.
It goes on the developer side. So like as developers are going through the CEQA process, as they propose their initial plan, the CEQA process would be required to analyze how they'd have to navigate a wildfire emergency. So if that means that the lead agency would have to propose a new wildfire mitigation requirement, whether it's like an escape route or some other home hardening requirements, that's how they would navigate those situations. So it's on the developer side, not so much the homeowner or the whoever ends up purchasing or controlling the land or buildings that are developed.
I understand. I really appreciate that clarity. I really appreciate what Miguel put in the sign. And if I could save the chat, I will do that. And then my other question, my follow-up question is, when we're sitting in these meetings, knowing that legislation changes and amendment changes and language changes over time, do we say in these meetings, like what I usually say, and I want to know it's okay to say, is if anything significantly changes, we would like to reach back out to you. And so, so we become a source of knowledge, follow up. We become their expert in their corner. So I want to make sure you're going to tell us that so we can reach out to them. So thanks very much.
Yeah, definitely. And offering yourself as a piece of or a source of information is a great thing to do.
Great. Sue, do you have a question? You're muted if you do. Okay, maybe it's a residual hand. Lisa, yeah, go ahead, Lisa.
Yeah, and tagging on to Martha, as a practical matter, our chapter has 11 lawsuits, all successful based on CEQA. And one of the things about it is it's usually it happens in a settlement process where a project is made better than it was before. OTI 13 that Bonta was involved in, for example. We ended up with more housing, more open space, a much better project. But one of the things that is missing is the ability to also analyze the future impacts. And it's hugely important for one of the lawsuits we're engaged in right now. If this was back in CEQA, we'd have a much stronger case on a very, very bad project that poses incredible fire hazards. It's a 500 homes and a commercial center surrounded on all three sides by 13,000 acres of open space, chaparral, highly flammable, et cetera, with only one evacuation, 2-lane road out. And having this back as part of our ability in our toolbox to settle on this and create either a better project or much better mitigation, this is essential. So to me, this is one of the most important ones that we can advocate for. And I'm also bracing for all the opposition that's going to happen from the building association, BIA, BIA, et cetera.
Great additions, Lisa. Thank you for that. We're gonna move on to the next one for the sake of time, but if you have any other follow-up questions, please feel free to
In the ocean, there is a very simple
feel free to put them in the chat. Okay, this next bill is AB 2494. This is for all of our forest friends, also for all of our friends up in the Redwood chapter. AB 2494 is fundamentally about bringing California's demonstration state forests into the 21st century. These forests, over 85,000 acres of publicly owned land, are still managed under a framework established in 1947, when the primary goal was to support timber production. But today we are in a completely different reality. Climate change, catastrophic wildfires, and biodiversity loss all demand a new approach. One that prioritizes long-term ecosystem health and public benefit. This bill updates the mission of these forests to focus on ecological restoration and wildfire resilience. This means managing forests in a way that reduces fuel loads, strengthens ecosystem health, and improves their ability to withstand climate impacts. It also explicitly prioritizes biodiversity and carbon sequestration, aligning forest management with California's climate goals. AB 2494 does not eliminate active forest management. Tools like thinning and logging are still allowed, but they are used strategically in service of restoration rather than as the primary objective. Another key component of this bill is tribal co-governance. For generations, tribal nations have stewarded these lands using practices that promote balance and resilience. AB 2494 creates a framework to incorporate that expertise and ensures that tribes have a meaningful role in managing these forests going forward. This bill also recognizes that these forests provide a wide range of public benefits beyond timber. Places like Jackson Demonstration State Forest, which is in the picture right below, are already used for recreation, for tourism, and education, and they support local economies in more sustainable ways. AB 2494 builds on that by ensuring these lands are managed for clear water, for recreation, and for long-term community benefit. Hopefully, this is ultimately a common sense update. It aligns state forest management with modern science and with climate realities and with our state's values. That is why we strongly support AB 2494. Any questions about this? Anything, Jacob, that you want to add? Or I know Karen is a strong proponent of this bill. Anything that anyone wants to add or any questions?
I think this one's pretty straightforward, just shifting the mandate of how we should manage our demonstration forests. There's a ton of opposition from the timber industry because they know that it means less logging in forests, which is good for us and bad for their business models. So that's why it's on here. It'll take a good push from grassroots folks to get it up across the line. And I want to also mention that if this were to go forward and demonstration forests were to be able to manage with more of a climate and environmental focus, places like Jackson Demonstration Forest in Northern California will be able to count towards our 30 by 30 land goals. So like it's very important that we get to our 30% conservation of lands conserved by 2030, and this is a step that'll help us do it.
Yay. Great points, Jacob. Any questions about this one? It is pretty straightforward. Yeah, Susan, go ahead.
I was just wondering about these management tools, including logging, especially when it comes to roads and plantation. There are so many things that are involved with thinning versus clear cut versus logging, roads. Or in this bill, are there specific regulations that are outlined? Um, and is how does this relate to either a CEQA review or the timber review? Uh, or it just seems very sort of a non-specific when it comes to that point.
My understanding is that this is in addition to those things that already exist. So, like for demonstration forests, there are already rules surrounding thinning and logging and the roads that are required to do those things. And this just allows the demonstration focus to shift more towards restoration and wildfire resilience and climate, um, uh, goals like biodiversity management. So it wouldn't necessarily touch those things and just adds uh, climate goals on top of it.
Jim, we're gonna hop over to you, and then we're gonna just go through the next two bills kind of quickly because there's only 8 minutes left. So,
Oh,
go ahead, Jim.
okay. I just want to ask if there were any argument that can address urban people like my assembly member.
I think one of those things is like uh, maintaining these places as places to recreate and visit. In that if we're gonna prioritize our outdoor spaces for logging instead of outdoor recreation, it harms people in urban environments as well as they try to, get out into nature.
All right. Let's move on to the next one. One of everyone's favorite bills coming up this year. SB 954. And this, of course, relates to everyone's least favorite bill from last year, SB 131. This is an important cleanup bill responding to the sweeping changes that were made last year under SB 131. And just as a reminder, SB 131 created broad exemptions for CEQA for what is called advanced manufacturing. But the way it was passed through a rushed trailer bill process meant that there was very little transparency or public input or policy vetting, and the result was a set of exemptions that are far more broad and risky than intended. SB 954 is fundamentally about fixing that. First, it restores critical environmental protections that were weakened under SB 131, especially protections for endangered species and natural lands. These are core parts of CEQA that ensure we're not trading away long-term environmental health for short-term development, and SB 954 reinstates those protections. So, um, no exemptions for land that have endangered species on it anymore. Second, it adds important guardrails for any projects that may still qualify for streamlined review. This includes requirements for safe siting, so facilities aren't located right next to homes, schools, or communities that are already overburdened by pollution. It also includes limits on air pollution and creates a state level certification process to ensure oversight and accountability rather than allowing projects to self qualify. Third, this bill includes strong labor standards and benefits from really strong support from many of our unions. If projects are going to benefit from advanced manufacturing exemptions, they should be creating high quality jobs through prevailing wages, through skilled and trained workforce requirements, and community benefit agreements. And so SB 954 boasts all of those uh, commitments. And then, of course, the most important part of this bill and where our position is a little bit more nuanced, is around the definition of advanced manufacturing. So Sierra Club is taking a support if amended bill, or support if amended position on this bill, and it is specifically related to the advanced manufacturing exemption. Right now, the definition is far too broad. It comes from an old tax credit program and covers more than 85 different industrial sectors, including things like waste incineration, metal plating, and fertilizer production, industries that can involve hazardous chemicals, significant pollution, and major water and energy use. Without narrowing that definition, there's a real risk that harmful projects could still bypass uh, important environmental review. So our position is to support it in concept because it's clearly moving our state in the right direction, but we also do want to emphasize that it needs amendment and needs to clearly define a set of low impact projects that align with California's environmental and climate goals. Yeah, Jacob, I'm going to let you talk about this and then we're going to move straight to the next one, but then we can have questions for SB 954.
Yeah, thanks, Chris. I gotta hop out once. I'll make it brief. I think the key point with this one is that we are supporting it in concept with contingent on the fact that we need to see a stronger advanced manufacturing definition in the bill. The bill right now in print has like blank spots for the advanced manufacturing definition because they're still negotiating it as before it gets to the Senate floor in May. And so I think the big goal for advocating on a grassroots level is to build up legislators to be more comfortable in advocating for a stronger definition because industry is there telling them every day to make it weaker, to not clean it up in the ways that we want to see it cleaned up.
Yes. Okay, we're going to move on to SB 1392, but we'll make it quick and then we'll hop back to all these other bills. So keep your hands raised. We'll get to you in a second. SB 1392, also referred to as Leno's Law, proposes to expand exemptions from California's smog check program for certain older vehicles. While this may be framed as a niche or limited exemption, the reality is that it creates a significant loophole in one of California's most effective tools for fighting air pollution. The smog check program exists because it ensures that vehicles on the road are not emitting excessive levels of harmful pollutants like nitrogen oxides and particulate matter that have a direct negative impact on public health, contributing to asthma, heart disease, and other really serious conditions. SB 1392 would allow some of these older vehicles, specifically those manufactured before the 1981 model year, which are often some of the highest polluters, to avoid these requirements altogether. And while the number of vehicles may seem small, the impact is not. Older vehicles tend to pollute at disproportionately high levels compared to newer ones, meaning even a limited exemption can have outsized consequences for air quality. This is a especially concerning consequence for environmental justice communities. These communities already face higher exposure to air pollution due to proximity to highways and industrial facilities, and so weakening emission standards, even incrementally, only adds to that burden. Finally, SB 1392 creates enforcement and accountability challenges. The smog check is a straightforward, proven system, and creating new exemptions complicates that system and makes it harder to ensure compliance across the board. Moreover, the definition of what these collectors' vehicles are is incredibly vague and weak, and these owners can like self-identify their cars as such, and it just really is a very vague and bad policy. So we are adamantly against this bill. It is our only opposed bill this year, and we could really use your help in defeating it. Jacob, anything else you want to add to this before you hop?
Yes, this bill is so annoying. Last year, this was run from a Republican senator, and it made it almost all the way through the process. It died in its second appropriations committee hearing. But it's back again with the Democratic senator running it, Senator Cortese from the South Bay. So it's definitely a bigger threat this year, and he's chair of the Senate Transportation Committee, so he has some clout behind running it. It's so dumb. Smog Check is a good program, and collector vehicles, their owners have the money to go through it. They just don't want to, basically. These cars are incredibly polluting. On average, a car from 1982 pollutes 123 times more NOx pollution than a modern day 2025 model year car. And exempting this class of cars from smog check would add 1.5 tons per day of NOx emissions in California. It's bad policy. It makes no sense. And it's disappointing to see a Democratic senator giving it some legs. The entire Republican caucus is lined up behind it. So it has what it needs to get through the Senate and Assembly floors. So hoping to build some grassroots support against it, or just grassroots opposition, to remind legislators why they should vote for something that's annoying.
Jacob, you are the best. I know you have to leave at 1, but I'm here for a while to answer any questions. So I'm gonna hop over to Susan, but if anyone needs to jump, that is totally okay. So, Susan, what's your question? Oh, just kidding. Susan doesn't have a question.
Sorry,
Sharon,
I
what's your
lowered
question?
my hand. I'm sorry.
Oh, no worries, no worries. Sharon, do you have a question? Sharon Cook? You're muted, Sharon. Here, I can try to unmute you. 1 second. Okay, I think
Okay,
we can hear you now.
there we are finally. On the previous bill, it would seem the exemptions for advanced manufacturing the guardrails. It cites limits on air pollution, but what about water pollution? Because that is certainly a potential hazard with a lot of advanced manufacturing facilities if they are sited close to the ocean.
Sorry, I was unmuted now. It's a very good question, Sharon. And I think the goal is if we can really define this list to be a very restricted list of what actually qualifies for advanced manufacturing, we hopefully won't have to worry about specific water pollution impacts. And those impacts will have to be analyzed. So, but it's a good question and something else we can push for.
Thank you.
Cindy, go ahead.
Yeah, back to SB 1392. This is a really puzzling bill for me that folks would want this. Who owns these old cars? Are these like wealthy collectors or something?
Yes, well,
I don't get it.
it is called Leno's Law because Jay Leno has come out in full support of it. He's come to the Capitol building many times to cheer it on. And yes, this is fundamentally a bill for wealthy people who can afford um, nice collector's edition cars who want to skirt biennial smog checks. So this is not a bill that benefits communities. It's not a bill that benefits working people in any way. Certainly not a bill for affordability, and in fact will only worsen your medical bills in the long run. So,
Oh, it's like a millionaire's smog check, get out jail free card. Like they don't have
you
to do
know,
it, the rest of us have to.
it sure seems like it,
Yeah,
and I
maybe
think
we
that is
could
the
come up with a good
framing.
name for that because it's so patently unfair.
Yeah,
Okay,
yeah, seriously.
that was it. All these bills, by the way, this is really exciting. You guys picked some really good ones and ones that we have a good potential to win on. So really happy to be.
Totally. Thank you for your support, Cindy. We really appreciate it. I think Robert had his hand up next. So, Robert, go ahead.
Yeah, you're going to make the slides available?
Oh, yes, we are. We'll send out this recording and the slides shortly after this.
Thank you.
Jim, do you have a question? Jim Stewart? You're muted. Hi, Jim.
Okay, finally I'm unmuted. My apologies. So
No worries.
this is a little tricky. I wish Jacob were able to stay on in terms of support and concept. So, I mean, I'm trying to figure out how do I pitch my senator on supporting this bill? And is it correct to say that we support this whole bill and we are urging you as my Senator Gonzalez to help fill in those blanks so we have the maximum protection? Is that the kind of argument, or explain this?
Exactly, Jim. Yeah, that's perfect framing. I think you can say, we support this bill in concept. This takes care of a lot of the biggest worries that we have about SB 954 I mean, excuse me, SB 131 from last year, but it still doesn't close the gap on the biggest loophole as of right now, which is a sweeping exemption that is very vague for manufacturing projects for across the state. And so it's good, but we want to make sure it is fully comprehensive. And we are asking that behind the scenes that you advocate hard to make sure that advanced manufacturing is as restricted and narrow of a definition as possible.
Yeah, I asked this question in the permitting group yesterday, why you are not actually asking Blakespear to fill in those blanks. And basically, wonderful man from, anyway, he explained this. He said that we want to have more discussion because we want to have something that will pass. So in other words, if Blakespear put in what we want, it might just die. And so that was the argument and so all I'm trying to repeat to everybody here, when we talk to our senators, we want this bill to pass with as strong a definitions of advanced manufacturing in those blanks as possible. And we encourage you, our senator, to push for this. And this, of course, is actually really only applies, I just realized, to the senators on the the Environmental Quality Committee that it goes to next week. And so that is the critical factor for us. And then I guess we'll have to see what happens when it comes out. Is that correct?
Yeah, and I mean, listen, like we definitely, as much as we want this to be as strong as possible bill, we do want it to pass, and sometimes something is better than nothing. But I think our job as constituents is to emphasize with our legislators how important a strong bill is, and so that they know that they have the political capital and constituent capital to fight for this strong bill. And then, we can leave the behind the scenes work to Jacob and Gabby and our other wonderful policy analysts to do like the strategic political work. But our job is to be like, we need this to be strong.
Beautiful.
So
thank you so much.
yeah, of course. James, do you have a question?
Yes, it related to the previous bill. I think it was 1392 about Leno's Law. I was wondering the numbers that you have regarding the pollution that would be created by those older cars. Is that based on the average number of miles driven per year by new cars, which would be 12 to 15,000 miles, or is it based on the average number of miles driven by classic cars, which is less than 500 miles per year?
James, Jacob spouted those numbers off the top of his dome, which is very impressive, and I don't know exactly where they were from. I will ask him, and we will try to include them in our resources, so that you can have those numbers and also know exactly how they were calculated, because I don't know off the top of my head. Sorry about that.
I think the director put it in the chat.
Oh, okay. Perfect. Guess maybe it isn't in the chat. Oh yeah, average number of classic cars. Okay. Okay, Robert and Jim, any other questions?
Just lowered my hand.
Oh, perfect. Okay. Well, I think let's call it a day. I know we're a bit over. I can't tell you how much I appreciate all of your time. Let's get these bills passed. Oh yeah, Miguel, go ahead.
Yeah, you're okay, Lane. If you guys can hear me, sorry, my camera's off. Outage is going on here in LA. I'll explain later. I'm so excited to meet you guys. I'm gonna give this sort of farewell note for many of you who haven't had a chance to meet me. I'm the director of Sierra Club California. Lane is part of our staff who is phenomenal. You could very much see why. I want to just send you off with a little bit of a note on if you doubted, for a second there, how important the Sierra Club is in this moment. I hope you all in community get to see each other just like look at how many people are in this room alone, how many more you can add to this call, and how many more you can sort of spread this message by not only just being a constituent, but also just sharing to others, the impact that you're making as a member of Sierra Club. I want to just say thank you from our end, from our staff, who that support is felt by lobbyists all the time. I also want to make sure that if there are ever any questions, concerns, you want to get even more involved, you want to hear a little bit more, like how I put in the chat, my email is there. I am open to having all these conversations with all of you. I am always up for an open door policy. I want to hear how things are going. I've talked to your directors, I've talked to your chairs. I know how struggling it is in this moment, but it's also encouraging to see, more and more of us come together. So our legislators are feeling it. I appreciate you for what you're willing to do. And at the end of this legislative cycle, we're going to come out a lot greener and a lot more ready to go. And there's still a lot of work to do. So I appreciate you, every single one of you. A lot more fun things coming along this year. Lobby days definitely will be coming back. We are going to have a lot more in-person events, I promise. And so I appreciate you guys. And let's go get them. So thank you.
Yay, thanks, Miguel. With that, we will call it a day. Sincerely, thank you all so much for your time. And reach out if you have any questions, like Miguel said. But have a lovely Friday, and we'll talk to you later.
Thanks, Lane.
Bye.